All right, let's get into it. Top 10 Longhorns receivers of all time. Definitely drop your comments. Let me know what you think. Who would you definitely have on this list? Who do you think should not be on this list? I thought this was a really cool group to do because, I think the running backs debate is really pretty solved, especially on the top end. Same thing with the quarterbacks, but looking at the receivers of the impact guys that have really, really made a big impact over the past, even 20 to 25 years. Before that, not a lot of big-time names going through the Darrell Royal era who, Coach Royal was definitely one of those coaches who just did not like to throw the ball. But, all right, we're going to count down, starting with number 10. I've got Cotton Spire, and obviously he's not on the list for putting up a ton of, receptions, yards, and touchdowns, but he played during the late 60s, and in 1970 was his last season. He's on here more for impact, more for just his legendary status at Texas. And obviously was part of a couple of national championship teams. He was James Street, number one receiver, kind of slash end, just kind of in that offense. And again, Darrell Royal was quoted by saying that when you pass the ball, three things can happen, and two of them are bad. So he was definitely the coach that just wanted to run the ball, pound it down teams' throat, but, Cotton Spire excelled during a time when a receiver shouldn't excel in Austin. And, I think for that and his impact, and obviously, he made one of the most famous plays in Texas Longhorns history in the Cotton Bowl against Notre Dame to set Texas up at the 2-yard line, and then they make that touchdown to finish that long drive to cap the national championship season. So, for those reasons, I definitely could not keep him off the list. Obviously, there's been a lot more, a ton more production, since his time. I think right now he ranks somewhere around number 30 or something like that, just in terms of all-time yards. But when you consider all those things, I definitely think he needs to be on the list. So number 9, I got Johnny Lamb Jones. And I kind of struggled with number 9 here. I really, really, looked at other guys, Wayne McGarity, guys that played well after Jones. But a lot like Cotton, Lamb Jones excelled during a time where it was all about the run game. The 70s, he kind of came toward the end of Earl Campbell's, run. Earl Campbell, won the Heisman in 77, and then, Lamb Jones was an All-American in 78 and 79 after Earl Campbell left. And I really think that's kind of an interesting transition for Texas. And yes, Jones, had an impact running the ball early on in his career, but I just think on the merit of his receiving production alone, he deserves a top 10 spot. So I have him number 10, 85 career receptions, 1,603 yards, and 14 touchdowns. 14 touchdowns is a lot of touchdowns compared to just the overall history at Texas. And 14 touchdowns ties Wayne McGarity, number 10 all-time in receiving touchdowns for Texas. And just kind of think about how much time went by, through the 80s and through the early to mid-90s. Lamb Jones definitely made a huge impact. And I believe he had about over 800 yards rushing as well. But he's on here for receiving production alone. This list is for receivers only. All right, moving to number 8. I've got Colin Johnson. This might surprise a lot of people, but just looking at what he's done up to this point, really in 3 seasons, we're doing this video roughly midway through his senior season, which he's been hurt so far. So we got to do the video at some point. So guys are going to be moving around in a list like this. But 157 catches for more than 2,100 yards and 13 touchdowns already. Now, what would it be at the end of the season? We're not sure. He's been hurt a little bit. I would think that, let's just say he stays healthy and he finishes the year with another, he could easily add on another 600 yards. So Colin Johnson could really shoot up the all-time stats list really quickly by the end of this year. And I just also think, just from the sheer athleticism, impact that he's made, he's a team captain, he's a great guy, a smart guy, a football guy. He comes from a football family. His dad played and all that stuff. So I just think not only from the production standpoint, but the impact that he's made in this era of the Longhorn program as we're seeing it unfold right now. He's obviously been a favorite target of Sam Ehlinger. I think that Colin has played a major role in Sam's development and also the development of the other receivers on this team right now. So I really couldn't, I tried to talk myself out of putting Colin on here or trying to come up with reasons to not put him on here, but I think he just has to be on here. Let me know what you guys think about that. Putting an active receiver on the top 10 list who still hasn't yet finished out his senior season. So let me know what you think about that. I definitely want to see what your thought process is. All right, number 7, I've got Jackson Shipley. Going back to the era that he played, 2011 through 2014. I kind of look back at that time as almost like a forgotten sort of hazy era, right? Where we ushered out Case McCoy, we ushered out David Ash and Tyrone Swoops and all that all those guys. But Jackson Shipley ranks number 3 all-time in receptions, 218 receptions. He compiled more than 2,500 yards and 11 touchdowns. So a little bit lower on the scoring end, but definitely one of the all-time greats at receptions and yards. And really made a pretty big impact in his entire time at Texas, all 4 years. And came in, obviously, with huge expectations with his last name. The younger brother of Jordan wore Jordan's number, jersey number 8. So, looking at the time that he came into the team, I definitely think that maybe had Jackson Shipley, if he was a sophomore right now on this team with Colin Johnson and Sam Ehlinger, I think he could have made even a bigger impact. But there's still no denying just the production that he had, and also given the offense that he had to play in and just what was going on in the program at the time. Those were kind of Mac Brown's final seasons as things were starting to transition him out in the start of the 4 Charlie Strong years. So Jackson Shipley, number 7. Let me know what you guys think about that. And hope you guys like the football card images that we're using here. I thought that would be a cool touch. Obviously, Colin doesn't have any football cards right now, but I've been a football card collector all my life, so thought it'd be fun to put those up there. Number 6, I've got Mike Davis, okay? Talking about that same era that Jackson Shipley was in. Davis was pretty much just 1 year before Jackson Shipley's time, but Davis was a pretty big time recruit coming in, and again, thinking about the impact that he made during the era that he was in. but 200 career yards or career receptions, more than 2,700 yards and 18 touchdowns. And really, go back and look at Mike Davis's 4 years. He produced all 4 years of his career at Texas. And, he wasn't a guy that got a vast majority of his production in his final season or anything like that. He was really consistent all 4 years. And while that was a really weird, tough time for Texas just in terms of, wins and bowl games or not going to a bowl game, Mike Davis absolutely was one of the bright spots. And again, just like Jackson Shipley had to deal with, dealt with the quarterback carousel. That was the David Ash, Case McCoy years when Texas was trying to figure out who they were going to roll out there. So Mike Davis, maybe kind of an overlooked, forgotten name, but man, you can't argue with the consistency and the production he made and just making the most of his time. Number 5, got B.J. Johnson. Loved watching B.J. Johnson play during his 4 years. Looking at the early 2000s, 2000 to 2003, those battles with Oklahoma that Texas came up short in. But again, B.J. Johnson dealing with a lot of the same issues that we talked about with Jackson and Mike Davis. Chris Sims, Major Applewhite, who's going to be the quarterback and kind of dealing with that debacle. Also considering that he played, during Cedric Benson's, early time. I believe B.J. Johnson, he left 1 year before Benson, and that offense was really built around the running game. But B.J. Johnson still excelled, also during Roy Williams' years. But given the fact that B.J. was kind of the number 2 guy, there was also Sloan Thomas and Bo Scaife during those years. So B.J. made a huge impact despite all the other offensive weapons around him. 152 receptions, 2,389 yards, 16 touchdowns. So absolutely, I think he deserves to be on the list. Let me know what you guys feel about him being number 5. Number 4, getting into the top 4 here. So as you can, you're probably starting to guess names of who these might be, but where are they going to be ranked? Number 4, I'm going with Quan Cosby. For a lot of the same reasons we've talked about before. Number 1, impact. More than 200 yards or 200 receptions, nearly 2,600 yards receiving, 19 touchdowns. So Quan ranks 5th all-time in receiving yards and 4th all-time in receptions and touchdowns. So, man, he is right there in all-time production, no question about it. And I loved the way he played. He ran precise routes. He was so quick, and he was perfect for that Colt McCoy offense. So, he left 1 year before that 2009 season when Colt and Jordan Shipley were seniors. And another thing, Jordan Shipley was kind of the number 1 guy in that offense. He was obviously Colt's favorite, receiver, but Quan, still excelled. He excelled when Colt McCoy was a true freshman and a sophomore, and obviously a junior, but he was there, obviously for that 2005 national championship team. All of that just combined, really, really hard to put him any lower than 4th. I mean, he's got the numbers, he's got the impact, he was on great teams. All of those things factor in. So number 4, Quan Cosby, pretty confident about him. Let me know what you guys think about him being number 4. Number 3, I've got Mike Adams. I think Mike Adams kind of played in an often maybe forgotten era of Texas football, but you had guys like quarterback James Brown, Priest Holmes was there. Ricky Williams was kind of just getting his Texas career started during Mike Adams' years. Mike Adams was there for really 5 seasons, but man, over 3,000 yards, and he was a big play guy. He had just over 17 yards per catch, and then the 16 touchdowns. So, and I also think that, Adams excelled in an era where you probably wouldn't expect a guy to get over 3,000 yards. And there was a pretty big gap there from, we had Johnny Lamb Jones, late 70s, and then, you go through the era of the 80s, and now you get to kind of the mid-90s, and then Mike Adams is there, and in his receiving yards, it was a record for years. I think until Roy Williams broke the record, which was quite a long time. So he held that record for years, and no one else even came close to touching his 3,032 career receiving yards. He was number 1 by far. So I think Mike Adams has got to be at least in the top 4. And it was tough for me, to put him any lower than number 3. And I think just for his sheer production and impact and his big playmaking ability. All right, coming down to number 1, number 2, you're probably screaming out their names right now. You know who's left, obviously. So who's going to be number 2? Who's going to be number 1? I definitely want to know what you guys think about this. Where would you rank these 2 guys? At number 2, I'm going with Jordan at number 2. Okay? Found a really cool press pass card of his here with his Hookem inscription autographed. But, man, we could probably sit here and do an entire video about Jordan and his impact, but obviously came in with Colt McCoy. Their, just kind of careers mirrored each other. Best friends, Colt McCoy's little buddy. But 248 receptions, ranks number 1 all-time in Texas history. 3,191 yards and 33 touchdowns. So that's number 2 all-time in receiving yards and receiving touchdowns. And then obviously just a massive impact, perfect receiver for Colt McCoy, perfect, precise route running athlete, speed, hands. Jordan Shipley just was absolutely phenomenal at, finding the open spot, the soft spot in the defense, especially in those zone defensive coverages. Had that huge game against Oklahoma in 2008 when Jordan was a junior, ran that punt back for a touchdown to really swing the momentum of the game, and had that really long touchdown or reception in the game when Texas was number 5, Oklahoma was number 1. And then, made big plays in the national championship game when Colt McCoy got knocked out. When they rolled out Garrett Gilbert out there, Jordan Shipley still stepped up and made an impact, and really kept, I think really was a huge part in keeping Texas in the game into the fourth quarter until Alabama kind of ran away with that game. Can't say enough about Jordan and his impact on the program and just his personality. Him and Colt are cut from the same cloth, that kind of old school Texas, outdoors, kind of rugged outdoors football player type of guys, country guys, and that's just an awesome personality, to have. I was fortunate enough to interview Jordan and his wife on the Facebook page at Texas Horns Football, and man, just such a easygoing, nice, friendly guy. That just really cool to be able to see that side of him, and he's involved in Longhorn Network. So, hats off to his career. But number 2, let me know what you think about putting Jordan number 2. And obviously that leaves number 1. You already know who it is. I had to go with Roy Williams for a few really key reasons that I just couldn't deny. Number one is obviously just the 4 years worth of production. 241 receptions, which ranks number 2 all time. 3,866 yards, number 1 all time, by a pretty good margin, by more than 600 yards. 36 career receiving touchdowns, which is 3 more than Jordan. And so not just the stats, not just the production, but Roy Williams was just an absolute beast coming out of Odessa Permian, and just kind of his expectations and potential was so huge, and I really, really think he absolutely lived up to it. Also considering the fact, just like we said about B.J. Johnson, Roy Williams absolutely dominated during an era where we saw Chris Sims, Major Applewhite, kind of this quarterback carousel debacle debate going on, and that's not easy for a receiver. And also, given the other weapons around him that were involved in the offense, B.J. Johnson, Sloan Thomas, Bo Scaife, and then Cedric Benson. Roy Williams, his senior year was Cedric Benson's junior year, and that offense was built around feeding Cedric Benson the ball, especially using him to wear teams down. So, I absolutely, for those reasons, got to put Roy Williams number 1, just in terms of impact, the legacy that he left on the program, just the absolute incredible production that he left there at Texas. So, and then obviously had a decent NFL career as well. Was a top first-round pick in the NFL. Not that really dictates or determines a player's college career. I lean more toward that whatever you do or don't do in the NFL doesn't strengthen or take away from what you did in college. So, Roy Williams, number 1 Longhorns receiver of all time. Take a look at the list, guys. Let me know where you would rank them. Who would you take off the list? Who would you put on the list? Who's the best receiver that you've ever seen play or that you've ever seen in person? I've been fortunate enough to meet and interview, some of these guys: Jordan, Roy, Colin, Jackson, Quan. So it's awesome to meet these guys and see them on a more personal level. But that's my list. Let me know what yours is. Don't forget to subscribe, give it a thumbs up. Check us out on Facebook, Texas Horns Football. We are up to more than 54,000 followers on that page, Longhorns fans. So we have a lot of fun on there, make a lot of great connections, do live interviews and other videos there as well. So hope you liked it. Comment, share it out, and we always appreciate you. We'll see you on the next video. Hook 'em Horns.